What just happened on CNN may be the single most unintentionally revealing moments in the history of that network. The ever-patronizing Abby Phillip was forced to literally stop her own broadcast when her Democrat panelists went into a complete meltdown. This latest Supreme Court decision to overturn every single racially gerrymandered district is literally destroying the Democrats in real time, and they are absolutely unhinged. Make sure to stick them to the very end of this video, because we're going to see how this woke leftist making all this noise was simultaneously making the single most devastating argument against his own politics and his own party ever broadcast on cable news. And I'm going to prove it to you step by step. You're not going to want to miss this. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, enjoying yet another glorious day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world and trigger liberals like never before, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. All right, so the clown show known as CNN Panels had to cover the Supreme Court's decision to overturn the congressional maps for both Alabama and Louisiana, which means that they're overturning and redrawing their race-based majority black congressional districts and turning them into solidly Republican ones. Now, what's essential to get here is that the court's ruling was very, very straightforward. You cannot draw congressional districts primarily around the racial identity of voters. Simple, right? That's it. Who would argue against that? Nobody lost their right to vote, not one person. The 15th Amendment is still intact. The Voting Rights Act protecting everyone's right to vote is still fully operative. Every single black American citizen still has the exact same right to vote they had last week. All the court said is the government does not get to sort citizens into voting blocks by skin color. Simple, constitutional, and morally correct. Unless, of course, you're a Democrat, and a Democrat on CNN.
If somebody fell asleep in 1896 and woke up today in 2026, they would simply say the only difference is now Negroes have a TV show and we wear nice suits. They swapped out Klan hoods for Brooks Brothers suits. And that is the problem. I mean, Plessy v. Ferguson was 7-1. And it gave birth to 50 years of Jim Crow. What we have with this court right now, what we're seeing is watching people who have fought and died and bled so that we would have access to the ballot box, so that we would have access to our voices being heard in Congress, being ripped away. And I think that there is a casual laughter from people we believe to be our friends on the right who are showing us true colors today, because the most sacred, or one of the most sacred acts you have in the United States of America is the ability to cast a ballot and elect someone and send them to Congress, the State House, or a mayoral seat that represents your interest. And now black folks throughout the South are being silenced. And I don't find that to be a laughing matter.
Now, there are a couple of things going on with that obvious duplicity on this guy's part. That was a fellow by the name of Bakari Sellers, and he's a race huckster par excellence. He inhales the same incessant racist nonsense as Joy Reid before she was sacked from MSNBC. Remember, what is this guy responding to there? What is that vitriol directed towards? Don't ever let woke talking points cloud your sense of reality. What was he responding there? He's responding to the Supreme Court's ruling that you can't draw congressional districts around the racial identity of voters. The government does not get to sort citizens into voting blocks based on their skin color. And Mr. Civil Rights is actually arguing against that. The woke left has gone so insane that they perceive that rulings aimed at eliminating racial discrimination are themselves the epitome of racial discrimination. And if you support those rulings, you are a bigot. You support racism and racial discrimination. Now, how on earth does he do that? Stick with me, because I'm going to show you exactly the rhetorical technique that he and the woke left routinely use to turn efforts at reversing racial discrimination into supposed epitomes of racial discrimination. But first, let's watch what happened when this woke leftist was reminded that not a single person lost their right to vote. Not a single person's even remotely discriminated against by this ruling. Watch how the defender of social justice responds.
The problem with that sentiment is that you were born in 1954.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
Very popular
You're
that
71.
Yeah.
Right. In 1954.
By the way, I'm a vampire. I'm never gonna die, so
during your lifetime, we've actually had Brown v. Board of Education.
I remember.
Yeah, Brown v. Board of Education. I don't know how you remember it. I think you were like 2 months old. But I'm not finished yet. Let me finish my thought.
Drill back to 54.
Yeah, because you're still alive, right? And so there's an entire generation of people. Brown v. Board, it overturned Plessy v. Ferguson of 1896. My point is that my mother was born in 1951. She desegregated schools. My father was shot in the civil rights movement. Those people.
Let him finish.
I'm going to finish because you're being utterly disrespectful.
Not at all.
So I'm going to finish this comment. So what I'm telling you is that there are people in this country who fought, died, and bled for the right to vote. Don't be a dick. Just understand.
Okay. Bakari,
just
please.
I'm not
understand.
a dick. I'm pointing something out to you. The Constitution is being upheld. Do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with the Constitution of the United States of America?
Bakari, I'm going to stop you because I just want everybody to reset with a modicum of respect at this table. Please stop.
But first, gang, let me ask you a question. Have you looked at the news lately and felt like no matter how hard you work, the global establishment it keeps finding new ways to drain your wallet? I mean, you're doing everything right, but between the geopolitical chaos and the economic uncertainty, it just feels like relying on a paycheck or 401k just isn't a safe plan anymore. Here's the problem. The globalist elites have designed it this way. They've created a rigged economic system that thrives on chaos, silently stealing your wealth while they get richer. And it's a trap that keeps you dependent, exhausted, and anxious about what's coming next. But what if you could step out of their system and build your own? What if there was a way to build financial security for your family that doesn't depend on what's happening in Washington or in the Middle East? A system that doesn't require employees or customers or taking on a grueling second job? What if you could do it in just minutes a day or even minutes per week from anywhere you choose? Well, that's where my good friend Troy Noonan, the backpack trader, comes in. Troy has spent 35 years perfecting a step-by-step approach to stock trading that makes this accessible to everyday people like you and me. And I know it works because you know what? I'm actually a member of his program. Troy just blows my mind every week. Here's what makes Troy's approach different. He'll show you how to prove the system works for you before you risk a single penny of your hard-earned money in the markets. It's like learning to fly in a flight simulator, but with stock trading. You can see the results first and prove the plan will succeed for you again before you risk a penny in the markets. This is a real difference maker. No one else teaches this. Troy's hosting a special free live training called Backpack Trader Live exclusively for our community on May 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Now, when you register, he'll instantly send you his 12 Powers to Successful Trading ebook, packed with concepts no one else teaches, the ingredients that lead to successful trading. And when you show up to the training, you unlock an exclusive bonus you simply can't get anywhere else, the private replay of our Turley Roundtable. This was a rare closed-door event where Troy, myself, and real backpack trader patriots all sat down together. We took raw, unfiltered questions from guests, which sparked an incredibly enlightened discussion about exactly how everyday people are using this system to build real wealth and total freedom. This is your chance to stop being a victim of their economic system and start building your own. Go to backpacktrader.com/turleyfreedom right now and reserve your spot for May 19th. That's backpacktrader.com/Turley Freedom. Your bright, beautiful future is waiting. Let's go get it together. All right, it's time to put your logic cap on, because once you understand the fallacy that this guy, Bakari Sellers, is committing here, Not only does his entire argument collapse, but you understand exactly the fallacy that the whole of the woke left lunacy is based on. What you just saw there and why he got so visibly frustrated is a textbook case of what's known as decontextualization. You may want to write that down. Decontextualization. Decontextualization involves permanent roles played by races that never changes. These are permanent roles played by races that never changes. So whites are always oppressors. Blacks are always oppressed. And again, the key here is always. Differing historical and social and cultural contexts are never foregrounded. We're never allowed to ask the question, okay, well, yeah, racism certainly was operative then, but is it operative now? And how do we know? What were the conditions that exemplified racist attitudes in the past, and how are those conditions different today? Are they not different at all? If not, why? You see, the economist Thomas Sowell, who himself was black, of course, was brilliant in how he pointed out that the left always refuses to historically contextualize their claims so that it can make their accusations in the present. This is the notion of decontextualization. It's always a matter of a singular evil with a singular bad actor perpetrating that evil. So for the woke left, that decontextualized evil is racism. Okay, racism is there everywhere all the time. No matter what. Doesn't matter if it's 2000 BC or 2000 AD. Racism is always there. And then the decontextualized actors are always white supremacists. Always, all the time. But here's a little context for you. The 15th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act, I should say, of 1965, the decades of subsequent legislation, they exist precisely to guarantee that no black American can be denied the right to vote. And the inconvenient little truth here is that context separates, it divides, it distinguishes between social, cultural, and political conditions today from the ones that Bakari Sellers narrated with Jim Crow in 1898 and the civil rights movement and the like. Nobody lost their right to vote in this ruling. Not one person. What the court said, again, ironically, is you can't draw a congressional map primarily around racial identity of voters. That is the opposite of Jim Crow. Jim Crow deliberately sorted people by race to deny them their rights. And here's the irony of ironies. Because of this decontextualized narrative that the woke left lives and breathes on, there's always racism. Racism never ends. There is always racial identity prioritizing congressional districts. Always. So people like Bakari Sellers are demanding that they be the ones who define the racism. It's a pure power move. This is wokeness in its essence. This is the necessary consequence of a decontextualized worldview. If society is always racist, and if white supremacists are always the oppressors, then justice demands that black voters free themselves from that oppression by being able to define their own race-based redistricting. It's not finding liberation from racism, because racism always exists. It's being able to determine their own race-based redistricting. This is the deepest irony to every single sentence spewed by that woke leftist on CNN. And it's almost too rich. Bakari Sellers is arguing that the antidote to racial injustice is more racial classification. Because the injustice isn't the racism per se, it's who gets to define it. And it's whites. And the only way you get to break free from that is if blacks now get to define their own racial categories. Think about it. The remedy to a history of government sorting people by race is more government sorting people by race. He's deploying the very logic of the segregationists to supposedly fight segregation. The segregationists said these people must live here, vote here, and go to school here because of their race. What's this guy saying? The race-based districting advocate says these people must be grouped here, represented together, counted as a block because of their race. Otherwise, there's no justice. It's not just question begging. It's advocating a politics that is identical to the very Jim Crow era practices that they denounce. It's just now they're in a position of power to define the racially designated districts on their own terms. That's supposedly justice. The mechanism is identical, only the stated intention differs. And as Justice Clarence Thomas, who of course is himself black, as Justice Thomas has argued for decades, the Constitution is colorblind not because race doesn't exist, but because the moment government begins sorting citizens by race, even with benevolent intentions, it licenses the very machinery that produced the injustice in the first place. But the most lethal problem with Sellers' argument, the one he can't see because he's too emotionally invested, is the self-indictment it contains. He argues that black Americans in 2026 are in essentially the same position as black Americans in 1896. Nothing has changed. The oppression is continuous. It's unbroken. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but black Americans have voted for the Democrat Party at rates between, say, 85 to 95% for over 60 years. So if Sellers is right, if truly nothing materially has improved, then the Democrat Party has had a near monopoly on black political loyalty for 3 generations and delivered essentially nothing by his own account. He's not making an argument against the Supreme Court. He's making the single most devastating argument against the Democrat Party ever uttered on live television. And he doesn't even know it.